meeting will now
Recording has started.
The meeting will now come to order. Welcome everyone to the March 17, 2022 special meeting of the City of Santa Monica Housing Commission. I want to thank all the commissioners and the public for being here to participate this evening. Before we get started, we have an announcement. Effective yesterday, Chair Hilton resigned his position as chair. We thank him for his service, and we will agendize the selection of the chair for the next meeting. I will be presiding. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Excuse me. The next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please state the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
And I will now call roll. Commissioner Kamner.
Present.
Commissioner DeBaca.
Here, present, sorry.
Hello. Commissioner Gomez.
Present.
Commissioner Gray.
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Hilton.
Here.
And Vice Chair Marasco.
Present. And next, we will move to special agenda items. Do we have any special agenda items? I think that's a question for the city. Is that correct? The swearing in of the commissioner, of a new commissioner?
Oh, yeah. I think you do that. I think you read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a copy of the oath for Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Gray, do you have a copy of the oath?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gray. Please raise your right hand and recite the oath, please.
I, Michelle Gray, do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Housing Commission.
Congratulations, Commissioner Gray, and welcome to the City of Santa Monica Housing Commission.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. If you could, please, can you introduce yourself and give us some background information so that the commission and the public can get to know you a little bit better?
Sure. My name is Michelle Gray, and I'm a recent transplant to Santa Monica, but I've been here many times over many years, and I'm very happy to be living here. I look forward to helping our community by serving on the Housing Commission. I've spent the last year engaging in quite a lot of activity with various departments and agencies in Santa Monica and Los Angeles related to housing. And so I look forward to bringing to bear my experience business here at the Commission.
Thank you so much. Before we proceed with tonight's very full agenda, to most smoothly and efficiently make our way through a lot of business, a large portion of which I will be presenting. And in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, I move that just for tonight, Commissioner Gray, just for tonight, preside over this meeting.
I would.
Is there any?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I would like to second that.
Thank you. And does anybody have any objection? No objections? Okay, if there's no objections, I would like to turn the meeting over now to Commissioner Gray.
I'm sorry, Teresa, do we need to take a vote? Or no?
Actually, I'm not sure. But there were no objections, so
Okay.
do I need to take a vote? Shall we take a vote?
Something that someone can weigh in on? Mary, perhaps?
I am just here really in the position of tech assist, so
I understand. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
that's okay.
Okay.
So just for to ensure that this process is being done properly, I move to vote on Commissioner Gray presiding over the meeting this evening. Oh, I'm sorry. So I would be doing the roll call. Is that correct? Mary Orr?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Camner?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton? Commissioner Hilton?
No.
So that is, and I vote yes. So that is 5 yeses and 1 no.
To vote yes.
To vote yes. So it is a unanimous vote, and Commissioner Gray, I am turning the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Maxwell. Good evening, everyone. We have a full and ambitious agenda tonight, fueled largely by long addressed public concerns. But with careful agenda management, I believe we can successfully get through it. And in order to facilitate the ease of public input and the ease and efficiency of our working conversation and the clarity by the agenda order. First, as this is a simple change that does not substantively affect commissioners, but it significantly eases public participation, I move to relocate item 10, public comment, to immediately follow 1A. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Is there any need for discussion?
For special meetings, we don't have general public input. So number 10 doesn't apply tonight.
You can.
I heard Commissioner Hilton. Was that Mr. Kemper piping in? I'm sorry, I can't see all the participants that aren't on video. But the second person who spoke is correct. It is not required for general public comment to be included in a special meeting, but it is permitted. And so we've decided to include it today. And so the current motion at hand is moving item 10, public input, to immediately follow item 1A, which would be right after this bit of housekeeping. And we had a second. Is there any more discussion or debate? Or are we ready to move to a roll call vote? Okay, hearing none. Are you in favor of moving public comment to the beginning of the meeting, Commissioner Kamner?
Should the motion be to have the public comment, just given that, you know, we're voting to have the public comment at a special meeting?
No, public comment is already on the agenda. We're just voting whether or not to move it to the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, I vote yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton? Has Commissioner Hamilton joined us by phone?
I think so.
Okay. Commissioner Hilton?
Yes.
Vice Chair Morosco?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So unanimously, the motion passes and public comment will immediately follow these housekeeping motions. For the next modification of the agenda order, the current agenda contains multiple items that are related but listed in separate sections. And so to ease the cohesion and flow of our discussion, I would like to group related items. So there are roughly 3 phases to today's meeting. The first part of the meeting would address multiple elements of the annual work plan. The second part would address procedural and housekeeping items. And the third part would address looking at and requesting various city housing reports. To minimize confusion, I have emailed each of the commissioners and faxed to Commissioner Hilton a copy of the proposed agenda order. If you could just take a minute to access those now. And Mary, I'm not sure if this is possible, but I've also sent a copy to you, and if it's possible to put it up on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Helpful to the public. And either way, the public can still follow along with the original agenda. All the items are the same. We're just talking about changing the order, and we'll announce each of the items as they come up. And I apologize for any potential inconvenience.
I have a question,
Yes.
which is, as housing staff is standing by, is there any chance theirs could be moved a little earlier? Is it possible to shift it a little earlier?
Yeah, we can
report.
do that.
This 4.5A, the annual plan and all those items. If possible.
Yes. Has everyone been able to open up the proposed order that I sent? It's been emailed to each of your city inboxes and faxed to Commissioner Hilton directly.
I have the revised version. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so, and we can discuss this in just a moment with 5A, but in the interest of efficiency and clarity, I move that we reorder the agenda as follows, with a brief break partway through. We have public comment, which we just moved to the beginning, followed by 4A, B, and E, 9E and D, and then 8A, 4C and D, 9B and F, and then 5A, 9A, and 9C. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner or Vice Chair Marasco. So in terms of discussion, does anyone have a suggestion about where we'd like to put 5A in order for the city to be able to present earlier in the agenda than later? You know what? Why don't we put 5A after 9D, if that would work? So then there are there are just 4 items ahead of them. Do you think that would work, Mary?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, so the current motion is to reorder the agenda as follows, and as you all have in your PDFs that I sent, with the exception of keeping item 5A after 9D. And do I have a second for that amended motion?
I will second that amended motion.
Thank you. And is there any objection or any more discussion, or should we move to a roll call vote? Okay, moving to a roll call vote. Are you in favor of reordering the agenda as just discussed? Commissioner Kamner?
Sir, can you say what it is that we're reordering it to again?
Oh, I'm sorry. First, were you able to retrieve the PDF that I sent you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, the changed order would be 4A, B, and E, 9E and D, and then 5A, 8A, 4C and D, 9B and F, and then 9A and C.
I vote yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, if you've joined us? Vice Chair Marasco?
I vote yes.
And the meeting chair votes yes, so unanimously the motion passes and the agenda will be reordered as discussed. So next up we have public comment. Can I turn that over to you, Mary? Do we have anyone? For item 10, general public comment.
Okay, would anybody like to speak? I wonder how we would organize this. People can raise their hands. Or just,
My name is David Morris. I want to speak public comment.
hello?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hello?
can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Oh, yes, yes. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. My name is David Morris. I'm a citizen of Santa Monica. I called in during the commission's meeting in February to offer public comments after I heard Vice Chair Marasco speak about how work of the work plan subcommittee went. I followed up with a letter to Chair Hilton voicing my concerns about his ethics and fitness to be chair. That letter was also forwarded to the city attorney's office and council members. It has since come to my attention that Commissioner Hilton has been maligning my name by spreading untrue statements about me in the letter. For the record, I am the sole author of the letter. I have never met or communicated with Vice Chair Marasco or Commissioner Hilton, contrary to Commissioner Hilton's statements. I had not written another letter to him in the past, let alone a slanderous letter as he claims. This kind of conduct by commissioners of the city of Santa Monica has to stop. It's the right of every citizen to make public comment without having to defend themselves from retaliatory and slanderous statements by public officials. This commission is changing for the better. The old ways cannot continue. We must set a new agenda for a new day for this city so that we can progress instead of being in the old way of doing things. I want to thank you for your time and wish you the best of success in the agenda that you try to create and to make forward for this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Is there another public comment? Anyone either calling in by phone or on the video platform?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? No, I'm not calling for public input. I am calling for public input.
Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Olga Zurawska. I would like to welcome Commissioner Gray to the Housing Commission, and I would also like to thank the Commission for preparing an agenda that reflects a lot of the concerns that the public has been bringing up to the Commission for over a year now. I am also calling in to object to Lenora Kamner's participation on the Santa Monica Housing Commission. Ms. Kamner is the paid executive director of the WIMBY organization, Abundant Housing LA. I would like to quote from the Abundant Housing LA's weekly newsletter dated May 31, 2021, quote, Abundant Housing LA, in conjunction with other YIMBY groups across the state, is excited to invite you to YIMBY Lobby Week 2021 on June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. What started as a one-day in-person event in Sacramento has since grown into a statewide three-day movement building extravaganza with YIMBY activists from across California lobbying their legislators to pass pro-housing legislation that can help California's housing shortage and affordability crisis. If you're ready to make your voice heard in Sacramento and advocate for a Housing First legislative agenda, be sure to RSVP today for virtual Lobby Week 2021. I have also submitted a written comment to the Commission, which includes the logo promoting the Lobby Week for Abundant Housing LA, and also a screenshot from the Abundant Housing LA blog with a calendar showing the Lobby Week for 2021. I have also submitted to the Commission an excerpt from the Abundant Housing LA 2019 IRS Form 990. On Schedule C, Part 2A, there is a section on lobbying expenditures, and you can see the amounts of money that the organization that Ms. Kamner is the executive director of spends on lobbying. Ms. Kamner and her organization, Abundant Housing LA, have been under investigation by the Fair Political Practices Commission since June 2021. Again, I object to the participation of Lenora Kamner on this commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zurawska. Are there any other public comments? Any other public comments? Okay, hearing none, let's continue to item 4, continued items. 4A is the work plan subcommittee report on commission work plan regarding April 21 Fair Housing Month and the Housing Authority Program by Commissioner Gomez and Vice Chair Marasco. Commissioner Gomez, are you ready to report?
Yes.
Please take the floor.
So here are the confirmations that we've received. From the City Attorney's Office, Gary Rhodes has confirmed that they'll participate in our April meeting, as has Denise McGranahan. Myrna Medina is not available, but both her and her supervisor, Elise Gordieff, have offered to participate in our June meeting. In addition to that, the chair and vice chair will function in an observation capacity at our April 21st meeting, and will confirm whether they can have somebody present for that particular commission at our May 19th meeting. So that's the status.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Just a point of clarification, the chair and vice chair, is that of the Disabilities Commission?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Elliott and Whitner.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Marasco, would you like to report?
Yes, so I am reporting on Housing Authority programs and a follow-up from our February 17th meeting where we had discussed moving up the date for Executive Director of the Santa Monica Housing Authority, David White, and the Acting Manager of the Santa Monica Housing Authority, Satara Yavari, to attend a March meeting. Obviously, March, they're not here. And so I did follow up with him, with Mr. White. He said that he was unable to attend in April, but he did offer to attend in late spring or summer. Mr. White also indicated that he would like for Mr. Agel, Ms. Yavari, and Mr. Kemper to join him in that meeting. Mr. White's assistant is in the process of working out a schedule so that all of them could attend one meeting at the same time. So I will follow up with Mr. White to find out what date will work best for him and the other staff mentioned to attend Housing Commission meeting in the future, possibly May or June.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair Marasco. Let's see, moving on to item 4B, the work plan. Discussion and possible action regarding amendments to the Commission work plan to reflect a fiscal versus calendar year and to alter or replace existing items. I added this to the agenda. It's my understanding that the Housing Commission has historically operated on a fiscal year calendar, so that the annual work plan is begun in July of each year, and that the city also works on a fiscal calendar. So in light of that and the relative lightness of the current work plan, I'd like to move to lightly condense the current timeline so that it's completed by July. And then in July, a new annual work plan subcommittee can be formed to create a full 12-month work plan for the following year for the Housing Commission. Is there a second? I think you're muted, Vice Chair Marasco.
I second your motion.
Great, thank you. Would anyone like to discuss this? Any debate or questions? Yes, please, Commissioner Kamner.
I have no opinion on the calendar or the timeline for this, I think it's fine. What you're suggesting sounds fine to me. I think, just because there's been discussion about the way that this work plan was put together, I feel that a lot of commissioners' views were not included in the work plan. And I would like to understand why my previous request that we study rent burden in the city was not included.
That's a good question. Is there anyone that would like to speak to that? Perhaps someone who was on the work plan subcommittee?
This is Vice Chair Marasco. I was actually unaware of that, and during the subcommittee meeting, the first subcommittee meeting that occurred, I was just handed the already pre-prepared work plan. So, and that is the work plan that was attached in the last agenda. So I wasn't even aware that you had things that you wanted to add to the work plan.
Commissioner Kamner?
We discussed the work plan at the last commission meeting, and I asked that rent burden be included as a topic on the work plan.
I don't recall the exact conversation surrounding that. Was the motion addressed? Did that be added?
I don't think it's been addressed, no.
Okay. Well, there actually, yes, Commissioner Marasco.
So there was, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kamner. So there, I don't remember there being a motion. I remember you bringing it up, but I don't remember that there were any additions that were being made to the work plan during the last commission meeting.
Would it make sense for me to make a motion now to include rent burden on the work plan?
Actually, I in the second part of 4B, I'd actually like to discuss altering the content itself of the work plan. So if we could just hold off your motion and first just vote on the issue of timing and just lightly condensing the timing. Right now, there's an attachment with the current work plan. There are proposed months for each of the 3 items, but there are also alternate months that bring it potentially into the fall. And so I'm proposing that we cover these 3 items and anything we may amend this current work plan with so that all of it is completed by this July. And then we'll just begin a new work plan for the following 12 months. But I hear you, Commissioner Kamner, and we will come back to that in just a moment. So the, yeah? Is there someone trying to speak? Okay,
yes,
so, yes.
Yes, is it time for public speaking?
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I just realized that I didn't call for public comment at the top of the item. I'm very sorry. Please, if you're calling to speak on item 4B, the work plan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, if you have a public comment, please share it now.
Within the proposal, I see that the RAB reps, the Resident Advisory Board reps, were invited to the Housing Commission meeting, and I believe there's no reason for the Housing Commission to advise the RAB tenants or have them really interact. It is to be advised by the Santa Monica Housing Authority, not the Housing Commission. And the Santa Monica Housing Authority is only supposed to help to assist the RAB in understanding the annual administrative plan and the difference between what is discretionary and what is not in the annual plan. and having ongoing discussions with the RAB to incorporate these discretionary changes if it deems feasible. The Housing Commission has nothing to do with that, so a lot of us don't understand why would the Housing Commission be hosting a meeting with them. So what should be happening is the Housing Authority should be assisting the RAB in all the ways that are described in a later discussion item for tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to share your name?
I'm Michael Lewis.
Thank you very much, Michael. Is there any other public comments on item 4B, the work plan?
Yes.
What's your name?
My name is Olga Zuraska, and I just wanted to briefly second the first speaker's opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Zuraska. Are there any other public comments? On item 4B? Okay, so going back to the initial motion, which is solely concerning the lightly condensed timeline of the current work plan, which, right as it's written, can potentially go through, I believe, August or later. I'd like to move that we condense the work plan so that that the entire thing is completed by July. So we can then start another full 12-month work plan cycle. Is there a second to this?
I second.
Okay, great. And let's move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton? Sorry, I don't think he's joined us. Commissioner Hilton?
No.
Vice Chair Marasco?
Yes.
And so with 5 votes for and 1 against, the motion passes, and the work plan will be lightly condensed as discussed. Now, moving on to also.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm
Vice
sorry.
Chair Marasco, I'm sorry.
It might be helpful for the public to be able to follow along if we could post a copy of the revised agenda in the chat on Blue Jeans. And I'm not exactly sure how to do that.
Certainly. Mary, is that something you can do? I copied you on it.
What I can do is I can put it on the housing website quite quickly. That works.
That's great. That would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Okay, so we're still on 4B, but now we're discussing altering or replacing existing items within the work plan. And Commissioner Kamner, you had mentioned that you had made a suggestion of something you wanted included that was not included. I brought up this item originally and to one of the public commenters' points because I would like to see the sub item that has the Resident Advisory Board representatives coming in as guests for questioning and discussion of correspondence and meetings, arranging correspondence and meetings for the RAB. The RAB is supposed to operate independently with minimal assistance from the Housing Authority, only in an admin support capacity. And so I don't think it's appropriate for us to involve ourselves in the details of the operations of the RAB. And also the 2 people who were invited, my understanding is that the RAB exists, if at all, in name only. And those 2 people who were once named as representatives of the RAB have since opted out of participating for a very, very long time, and so they're not meaningfully representatives of the RAB. And since the RAB has yet to begin to meet, they haven't chosen new representatives for themselves. And so I don't think that we need, I don't think we need RAB guests for that second item in the current work plan. There are things that we can do for the RAB, and that's coming up in another item on the agenda. But I would like to see that change, that we remove the specific work items concerning the RAB on the work plan. And Commissioner Kamner, you had another item that you'd like to propose for including in the work plan?
Yes. So my proposal is based on information that was provided to the Housing Commission last year.
Mm-hmm.
There is a 50% rent burden in the city of Santa Monica. And so I propose that the commission study the causes of this rent burden problem and recommend solutions to the city council.
Could Anonymous, who I believe is on, who's calling in, could you please mute your microphone?
I have no idea how to do that.
Okay. Mary, I don't know if you're able to do that for someone else, but if you are, if you could mute Anonymous, that'd be great. Thank you. Would anyone else like to weigh in on that, on the on us requesting a study of the causes of the rent burden in Santa Monica and proposed solutions? Okay. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and let's see the phrasing of that. I take it, Commissioner Kamner, you'd like to move to add to the current annual work plan that the commission requests a study of the causes of the 50% rent burden in Santa Monica and proposed solutions. Is there a second?
Well, just one change. I don't think we can request a study. I think we would have to conduct the study or the research and then bring those findings to the commission.
And I haven't seen that happen before. Do you know what the procedure is for that, with the commission conducting a study?
In the past, it's been a committee, like a subcommittee, and then the subcommittee does research, brings findings and recommendations to the commission discussion.
Okay, so you'd like to see a subcommittee formed to investigate this?
Yeah, I think a subcommittee could make sense. I mean, I'm open to what other people think. So, yeah, I guess like a subcommittee sounds good.
Okay. Does anyone else want to weigh in on this or on the timeline of this? Any other commissioners? Okay, so how about we stating that in the form of a motion. So it sounds like the motion at hand is to create a subcommittee to conduct a study of the causes of rent burden in Santa Monica and to propose solutions. Is that correct? Commissioner Kamner?
Good to me.
Okay, is there a second? Would anyone like to second that motion? I actually don't know if I'm allowed to second a motion. If somebody else can weigh in on that, I'd love to hear, because otherwise I'll
You're
second.
definitely allowed.
Okay, I second that motion. Okay, if there's no other discussion, let's move to a roll call vote. We're currently discussing if you're in, we're voting. The question is, are you in favor of creating a subcommittee to study the causes of rent burden in Santa Monica and propose solutions? Are you in favor of this, Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
No.
Commissioner Gomez?
No.
Commissioner Hilton?
No.
Okay, Vice Chair Marasco?
No.
Okay, so with a vote of 1 for and 4 against, the motion fails. I'd like to revisit the motion I made prior to that about lightly condensing the timeline. I'm sorry, not the timeline. About taking the RAB items out of the current work plan. Not that we can't discuss the RAB at all. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kamner.
Yeah, I'd like to understand why the commission doesn't feel that studying rent burden is within the mission of this commission or a priority for this commission.
Would any commissioner like to answer that question? Speak to why they voted no?
Yes, I would. The Housing
Commissioner
Commission subject matter is affordable housing, and that wasn't specified. Also, we did have a report on housing burden in our affordable housing. For instance, a HPP zoning requirement, and separately 100% affordable housing projects. I think the report was about 12 pages, and it came out in January 2019, and it was agendized, and there was a staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hilton. Would anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Kamner.
So it is within the scope of the commission because we have had reports on this previously, and it's been since 2019 since we visited this issue. So I don't see the relevance of those comments.
Well, it's a scope of the Housing Commission only in that if we discuss the affordable housing tenants and their burden. As far as a general discussion, it would probably be the subject matter rent control board.
Thank you, Commissioner Hilton.
If I may, from a procedural perspective, we've taken a vote. So how much more discussion is warranted on this topic?
That's fair. I'm still getting up to speed. I do understand that there are provisions in Robert's rules for asking for the explanation of a vote. But I think that that's been done now, so we can move on. Okay, so we're back to my motion to amend the work plan by removing the existing RAB items, which is inviting those two guests and working with them on their mailings and meetings. Is there a second to this motion to remove those RAB items from the work plan?
Yes, I second.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBaca. And if there are no other questions or comments about that particular part of it, I'd like to move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca,
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Marasco,
Yes.
and with 5 votes in favor and none against, the motion passes. So part 2 of the work plan will be so amended. Is there, before we move on from 4B, is there anything else anyone would like to propose in terms of amending the existing work plan content? Okay.
I'd like to make a suggestion, and this has
Please.
to do with fair housing. Is the federal community development block grant and home investment partnerships? Federal money provides funding to our Human Services Division, and the grantee is Disability Community Resource Center, and it's called Home Access Program, and we could obtain funding, data, and cases. The Home Access Program is a 5-year city grant, federal city grant for Santa Monica residents, and helps pay for home modifications, interior modifications, ramps, grab bars. It's important because it keeps seniors and persons with disabilities in their home.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Hilton. Would anyone else like to comment on that? I'm hearing Commissioner Hilton, you'd like to make a motion to add the home access program to the current work plan, and I suppose the details can be decided later about exactly when it'll take place?
Yes.
Is that the motion you'd like to make? All right. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you,
This
Vice
is
Chair Marasco. What's that? Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, we can move to a roll call vote. Are you in favor of adding the home access program to the current annual work plan, Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton?
Yes.
Vice Chair Marasco?
Yes.
And the meeting chair votes yes, so unanimously the motion passes, and the home access program will be added to the current work plan. Thank you very much, Commissioner Hilton, for bringing that to our attention. Okay, so let's move on to item 4E. Which is discussion and possible action regarding requests to send correspondence to the Disabilities Commission, clarifying errors in February 24th, 2022 correspondence. And before we begin, are there any comments? Are there any public comments on this item, on 4E? Yes, Vice
Sorry,
Chair
we're
Marasco.
supposed to have public comment on 4C? Or, I'm sorry.
4E. We're going from 4B to 4E.
Okay.
Any public comments on 4E? If there aren't any, Vice Chair Marasco, would you like to go ahead?
Okay, so 4E under the work plan. So An email was sent to the chair of the Disabilities Commission, Alex Elliott, and to the vice chair, Gilbert Wetter, that stated the commission, quote, voted unanimously, unquote, to invite them both to the April 21st and May 19th Housing Commission meetings to offer recommendations and improvements to the, quote, 15% interior modification requirements between the city trust fund and the 100% housing projects, end quote. The information provided to the Disabilities Commission was actually not correct, as the Housing Commission did not vote unanimously to invite them to the April 21st meeting as observers and the May 19th meeting to present. And it was actually not included in the work plan. Therefore, I move that an email be sent to Chair Elliott and Vice Chair Wetter that explains that the Housing Commission did not actually vote unanimously to invite them, but that the Housing Commission would still like for them to attend the April 21st meeting as observers and attend a meeting in either May, June, or July to offer recommendations and improvements to the 15% interior modification requirements between the City Trust Fund and the 100% housing projects.
Okay. And so, I'm sorry, do you have a motion? Motion is to send follow-up correspondence to correct that original correspondence?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Gray, could I please explain what took place with the subcommittee, the work plan subcommittee? So we had an election at our January meeting, and we elected 3 commissioners to serve on the work plan subcommittee. The subcommittee, 3 individuals, met at least twice for approximately 6 hours. So all 3 of us met for 6 hours, and that handout was
forgive me,
proposal.
Commissioner Hilton. Commissioner Hilton, forgive me, I have to interrupt you. We'll have opportunities to discuss the subcommittee in general and more length later. Do you have any comments that you'd like to make specifically on this correspondence to the Disabilities Commission and are extending a request, an invitation to them to join us at a different time?
Yes. At the February 17th meeting, the following month, we discussed the work plan to all the commissioners, and part of that motion by me was to incorporate the concerns of the vice chair and also any commissioners and add flexibility to the scheduling of the content. So I motioned and discussed the possibility of inviting the 2 Disability Commission officers or their designees to discuss the 15% interior modification requirement, and that they would be invited to listen at the April meeting and perhaps present and participate at the May meeting. So that was enunciated before the motion.
Vice Chair Marasco, would you like to respond to that?
The issue that I have is that the email specifically states that we voted unanimously. I'm sorry, give me a moment here. That we voted unanimously to invite them both to the April 21st meeting and then to come again on May 19th. And we actually didn't vote unanimously for that. I do know that we did vote with flexibility. I brought up the fact that I was trying to reserve the month of May for either or HCD to attend a meeting in May, and also Demetria McCain from HUD to be able to attend a meeting in May to respond to any information that we may have gathered during Fair Housing Month, and to address those issues, and also to discuss the ways that we can affirmatively further fair housing. And so, because we didn't specifically vote to, it was said with flexibility, but we didn't specifically vote on either the Disabilities Commission or to reserve space on the May agenda for HCD and or Demetria McCain. So as a result of that, I didn't take it upon myself to go ahead and invite Demetria McCain or to submit the request for a speaker to HCD. So I'm just saying that we didn't actually specifically vote on that. We voted on the work plan, but not on those other items, yours or your items, Commissioner Hilton, or the items that I brought up in the February 17th meeting.
Well, I motioned February 17th and have my notes. I retained my notes, and the notes said not only flexibility in scheduling, but also amending as discussed. And as far as the federal and state speakers that have been recommended, as far as the handout this evening, it says they're scheduled for June. But I don't think we should focus on the month necessarily, Vice Chair Marasco, because the DC representatives can come in June, perhaps. They might even come, well, yeah, they can come in June. They may not be able to attend in May. So there's flexibility moving forward, but I don't think it's respectful to reverse a letter or correct a letter that's already been sent.
Okay.
And if I may, my understanding is consistent with Commissioner Hilton's, and the fact that we're spending valuable commission time on this topic, because we only meet for a couple of hours each month, I think lends itself to the fact that we need to work much better as a commission. And if there's questions, we need not to use up valuable commission time, but to get issues clarified offline. So we don't use commission time on topics like this. And I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Yes, Commissioner, Vice Chair Marasco.
Just my last comment. Again, it was stated that we voted unanimously, and we did not specifically vote unanimously. I understand where Chair Hilton is coming from, that it seems like, it's odd or awkward to go back and reverse and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, that we didn't actually vote unanimously, but we're still, and I stand by my motion. Again, I did not on my own invite anyone until I would get approval from the commission, specifically to invite those people.
Can you please repeat your motion, Vice Chair Marasco?
So my motion is that an email be sent to Chair Elliott and Vice Chair Wetter that explains that the Housing Commission did not actually vote unanimously to invite them, but that the Housing Commission would still like for them to attend the April 21st meeting as observers, and a meeting in either May, June, or July to offer recommendations and improvements to the 15% interior modification requirements between the city trust fund and the 100% housing projects. I agree that it doesn't have to be necessarily June or July, or just if they can come in May, I would say to come in May.
Okay.
I would like to second that.
I'm sorry, who just spoke?
It's Commissioner Tabaka. I just wanted to second that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Tabaka. Commissioner Kamner, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to agree with what I believe Commissioner Gomez was saying, that I think there should be more time spent on this commission on substantive issues related to housing, substantive policy issues, given the severe housing crisis and its urgency. And, if we can avoid a lot of procedural discussion, I think that would be a better use of time.
Thank you, Commissioner Kamner. Is there any other comments?
Yes, the vote was 6-0, adding the amendments and the flexibility. And even if it was not a unanimous vote, it's not relevant to resend a letter. So I'll be voting no to the motion.
Okay, let me just add my comments before we go to a roll call vote. It seems that there was some miscommunication, and that it's unclear or in doubt that there was a unanimous vote. It also doesn't sound like there was a unanimous vote specifically to invite the guests for those dates, and so I can see how the letter is not strictly accurate. However, we would like to extend an invitation to them with modified date options in any case. And so it seems to me that we do want to send them follow-up correspondence either way with altered information, asking them to come at a different time than they were originally invited. With that, the motion on the table is to email the chair and vice chair of the Disabilities Commission explaining that it was mistaken. There was a unanimous vote to invite them for the 2 dates offered, but that we would like them to come and to offer alternative dates for them to present and participate as guests with the Housing Commission. And we have a second to that vote from Commissioner Tabaka, and we're going to go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Kamner.
Abstain.
I'm sorry, you said yes?
Abstain.
Nay? Abstain. Commissioner Tabaka?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
No.
Commissioner Hilton?
No.
Vice Chair Marasco?
Yes.
Okay, and with a vote of 2-2, the meeting chair votes yes, and so the motion passes. An email will be sent clarifying that we would like them to come at different dates than originally proposed. Okay, and moving on to item 9E. Which is concerning inviting state and federal speakers, discussion and possible action regarding inviting an HCD speaker and HUD Office of the Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Principal Deputy Assistant Demetria McCain to speak about fair housing in the May or June 2022 Housing Commission meeting. Before we begin, are there any public comments? Any public comments? Okay, Vice Chair Marasco, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, give me a moment because I'm looking for my attachments. So I actually brought this up in both the subcommittee meetings and also in the February 17th Housing Commission meeting that, as a follow-up to Fair Housing Month, I wanted to invite, and at the public's request, I'm sorry, per public input, requested to invite Demetria McCain, who is the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, or FHEO, at HUD. I did offer a attachment that gives a pretty brief bio and explains that, specifically her expertise is in, or the work that she is known for doing is her efforts to eliminate housing discrimination, to promote economic opportunity, and to achieve diverse and inclusive communities, which has been a goal in the city on the Housing Commission and other commissions, as well as City Council. And the fact that she is a well sought after speaker who could speak directly to housing voucher payment standards, which has also become a big question at this time with regard to small area FMR. I felt that it would be a great opportunity for her to come and to be able to speak to the commission and to the public about ways that we could affirmatively further fair housing issues, especially considering the fact that the housing element for Santa Monica was rejected. And she comes with a lot of accolades. I have not actually reached out to her because I wanted to first get the, I wanted to hear what the commission had to say about Ms. McCain, and especially after being able to look at the information that I attached about Ms. McCain. Also, I had brought up in the subcommittee meetings and also in the February 17th meeting about having a speaker come from HCD. I did actually reach out to them just so that I could find out what is the process for that, because I know that they offer technical support with regard to the housing element. And so the person that I contacted told me that there's actually a way to request a speaker on their website, and I did attach the request an HCD speaker form to the agenda under this item. And if anybody, would you like me to share my screen so we can just talk about it very briefly? Oops.
Sure, go ahead.
Not sure how to do that, actually. I'm so sorry.
If
Mary,
you
do
could
you
go to
know
the
if
icons at
I'm
the
sorry,
top.
I have it. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Kamner.
I think this is a great idea. I think it's constructive and helpful to the city. I think AFFH is an important topic within the scope of this commission. I'm almost afraid to say I support it because then everyone's going to vote the other way if I say I support it. But there you go. I support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kamner. Would anyone else like to comment or question? Did you want to share your screen, Vice Chair Maresca?
Oh, it's not, you can't see it?
I
Can you see it?
can't.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I don't know that that's true for everyone, but I don't believe I'm seeing it.
No, I can't see it.
I'm sorry. Well, it was included as an attachment, and the only reason why I wanted to share it is because There are many different boxes to check on this form, and I wanted the boxes to check as far as what the HCD speaker could cover. And just, for the purpose of discussion on this particular item, just to get a sense or an idea of the different boxes that the commission feels should be checked and any other information they think should be added to this request.
Okay, so the motion on the table is, or the motion before us is to invite an HCD speaker and or Demetria McCain to speak about fair housing in May or June at the Housing Commission meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
I would like to second.
Seconded.
Great. Many
Thank
seconds.
you. Thank you.
Let's move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton?
Yes.
Vice Chair Marasco?
Yes.
And the meeting chair votes yes. And so the motion unanimously passes, and we will extend an invitation to the HCD speaker and or Demetria McCain for May or June. All right, moving on. Item 9D. This is discussion and possible action regarding actually there's a mistake in this agenda item. It's substantively the same, but it says discussion and possible action regarding Santa Monica Housing Authority submitting a letter to City Manager David White, copying the Santa Monica Housing Authority Board, requesting the following. The error is just in the inclusion of the Santa Monica Housing Authority in that first line. The letter would be submitted by the commission, not by the Housing Authority, but everything else is correct, that it would be submitted to City Manager David White, copying the Housing Authority Board, requesting that they, one, set up an electronic meeting account for the Resident Advisory Board and schedule 4 RAB meetings for the year, the first to occur within 30 days of the date of the letter. 2, for the Santa Monica Housing Authority to send a letter to all 1,700 Housing Authority program participants announcing the convening of a RAB meeting to discuss the annual and administrative plans, including the date and time of the first 4 RAB meetings and all relevant electronic meeting information. And 3, for the Housing Authority to provide support staff to A, set up the RAB video meeting platform, B, create a website for the RAB, and C, establish a phone number that Housing Authority program participants can call to receive updates about the RAB. And there's an attachment. Are there any public comments about this before we move to Vice Chair Marasco?
Hello?
Yes,
Hello, I'd like to speak.
please. What's your name?
Good evening, Denise Barton.
Welcome, Ms. Barton.
Thank you.
Please-
Good evening.
please
First,
go
allow me to welcome Commissioner Michelle Gray and thank Commissioner Teresa Marasco for putting this item on the agenda. I agree with submitting a letter to City Manager David White to have a RAB meeting within 30 days of the date of the letter. But along with an electronic meeting, would in person be too much to ask? I'd also like to make a couple of points from the attachment under the heading of 903.13, which is the Resident Advisory Board and what is their role in development of the annual plan. Where under Part A, Number 2, it clearly states that the PHA shall allocate reasonable resources to assure the effective functioning of the Resident Advisory Board, which is not what the Section 8 tenants or any other affordable housing tenants in Santa Monica have. I understand it was begun during a pandemic and COVID-19, but the current RAB representatives seem to have more contact with the Santa Monica Housing Authority than the RAB membership, considering the RAB representatives do not respond to phone calls or email. Then at the RAB, what does it say? At the RAB, representatives don't return phone calls or email, then how can the RAB representatives know, the RAB membership know that their comments are being included in the documents they've been addressing? And I'm not sure there's been an actual RAB meeting yet. Now, why would that be? Would it be because the Santa Monica Housing Authority has included itself in the RAB, which is not its purpose in the RAB? And would the Santa Monica Housing Authority be trying to quash the voices of Section 8 and other affordable housing tenants in Santa Monica? So their abuse by the Santa Monica Housing Authority can continue to be kept quiet. Again, I'm for a real RAB meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barton. Are there any other public comments on item 9D regarding a letter concerning RAB support to City Manager David White? Yes, Commissioner Kamner.
I have a question. Are we able to send a letter of this kind to the city manager, or do we need to send a recommendation to the city council to send the letter?
That's a good question. Would any of the commissioners, perhaps some more senior members, like to weigh in on that? Vice Chair Marasco.
The idea was to send the letter to, even though he's the city manager, he's the executive director of the Santa Monica Housing Authority. And so it was, made more sense to me because he is the executive director to direct the letter to him and requesting that the Santa Monica Housing Authority address the items in the letter.
Vice Chair Marasco, I'm sorry, we didn't get a chance to hand it over to you. It was, this is your item on the agenda. Would you like to introduce it or make any other further comments on it?
Yes, I'd like to make further comments on it. I think in general, most of the commissioners understand the role of the RAB. I think that also most of the commissioners and the public understands the role of the RAB. The public who knows what a RAB is, they understand the role of the RAB. But I think what's important to point out is that it's my understanding, I haven't lived here, I've only lived here 8 years, but it's my understanding that for the last 15 years, there's not actually been an active RAB in the city of Santa Monica. And, I felt that this was a very urgent issue that needed to be addressed. And that the only way I know that lots of contact has been made since the two RAB representatives were arbitrarily appointed through a lottery system, that there's been attempts to communicate with them and there has been no response. And then, of course, attempts by many residents who are RAB members trying to get the Santa Monica Housing Authority to set up these meetings and get it started. And now we're about to go into discussion of the annual plan. And there's been no RAB meeting to actually be able to come together as a group, as an entire RAB, which would make up, I believe, 1,700 or so residents in the city of Santa Monica, to be able to have the opportunity to come together. Not that all of them would show up, but if it's a virtual meeting and they're given plenty of notice, and that they are, kind of the letter would also explain, and I would assist staff with this letter to explain what the RAB is, how they can participate, and reasons why they should participate, and to be able to schedule a first meeting whereby then these RAB members can come together and choose their own representatives and start the process of addressing the annual and administrative plans as a collective body that is acting separately from the Housing Commission, from the Santa Monica Housing Authority Board, and separately from the Santa Monica Housing Authority, only with the Santa Monica Housing Authorities providing assistance with setting up the electronic meetings, or setting up an account so that we can, or the RAB can, I'm sorry, so that the RAB can be in control of their own meetings, and to also provide a website for RAB members to go and be able to find out more information about the RAB, and also a telephone number for people who don't use the internet or any kind of electronic communication, to be able to just call and hear updates about what the RAB is doing. So essentially, the RAB acting on their own with the Santa Monica Housing Authority, providing the necessary items that they need to move forward with their meetings and starting the process of addressing the annual plans. And the Housing Authority basically just providing an overview and explaining the difference between what is mandatory and, what is mandatory or regulated by HUD, and what is considered a discretionary item that can be amended each and every year, and to go over those different processes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marasco. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay. So the motion before us, and I hear you also pointed out another correction, that this is not intended to be a letter to the city manager. This is intended to be a letter to the executive director of the Santa Monica Housing Authority, who happens to be the same individual, but we're interested in the motion is to write to him, David White, in his capacity as executive director of the Housing Authority. So the amended motion at hand is to send a letter to Housing Authority Executive Director David White, copying the Housing Authority Board and requesting setting up an electronic meeting account for the RAB, scheduling 4 RAB meetings for the year, the first to occur within 30 days of the date of the letter. The Housing Authority sending a letter to all 1,700 program participants announcing the convening of a RAB meeting to discuss the annual and administrative plans, including the date and time of the first 4 RAB meetings and all relevant electronic meeting information. And the Housing Authority providing support staff to set up the RAB video meeting platform, create a website for the RAB, and establish a phone number that Housing Authority program participants can call to receive updates. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBaca. And let's go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
No, and here's why. I think we're over reaching our authority here. He is still the city manager, and I believe this initiative needs to originate from the city council versus this commission. But in any event, I vote no.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm only pausing because I I realize I had wanted to make a comment, and I'm not sure it's appropriate during the roll call vote, but I didn't forget Commissioner Kamner's original question, and I do believe that because we are an advisory body concerning housing issues in the city of Santa Monica, I believe it is appropriate for us to write a letter requesting these things to the executive director of the Housing Authority. I suppose a different way of phrasing it would be that we are advising that they do these things. Of course, doing it is up to the discretion of the Housing Authority. And I agree that perhaps if we were addressing the city manager in that position, in the context of that role, that perhaps it should go to the city council instead. Having said that, Commissioner Hilton, how do you vote on the motion to send this letter to Housing Authority Executive Director David White?
I opposed it for different reasons. The terminology requests, and there's quite a few in the agenda item, makes too many demands, and because of Housing Authority staffing challenges, it sets deadlines which may not be possible.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hilton. Vice Chair Marasco?
Yes.
All right. There are currently 2 votes against and 3 votes for. The meeting chair votes yes, and so the motion passes. And we can work on that letter. You said, Commissioner Marasco, that you'll work on composing a letter?
Yes, I will do that.
Great, thank you. And now we are going to, I know this was a change made verbally at the beginning of the meeting, but we're going to go to item 5A. Because we have Housing Authority staff in the wings waiting to make a presentation, and we don't want to keep them waiting much longer. So we're moving to item 5, staff administrative items, and 5A, which is the Santa Monica Housing Authority annual plan. This is a presentation of the Housing Authority draft fiscal year 2022-23 annual plan with possible recommendation to council to approve the draft annual plan. There are no changes to the administrative plan proposed by staff, but input from commission and public can be provided, discussed, and considered. Would the representatives of the Santa Monica Housing Authority like to proceed? Oh, and I'm sorry, briefly, do we have any comments on this item before we proceed on 5A? Any public comment?
I'd like to comment.
All right.
I'd like to comment.
Please go ahead. What's your name?
Denise Barton.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Go ahead.
Good evening. For the annual plan, please let me begin by saying how happy I am to see that entities are beginning to see how the Santa Monica Housing Authority does not give reasonable accommodation to disabled affordable housing tenants in Santa Monica. My most recent experience is the Chelsea. The building my affordable housing is in at 1318 2nd Street, is that the unidentified white powder is being put out in the common areas of the building that gives me respiratory problems. But both the management and the maintenance refuses to even acknowledge it, even though I've made numerous requests since it began being put out in 2018. And the last time I mentioned it to Jim Kemper, the Santa Monica Housing Program Manager, on December 16, 2021, when speaking to him on the phone, his response was, if you don't like the conditions, you can always move. Just so everyone can get the full impact of the disadvantaged disabled people are put out in Santa Monica, Santa Monica's affordable housing program by the Santa Monica Housing Authority. Besides the disadvantage of complaints going to the people you're complaining about instead of a neutral person, and let's hope these things happen in reality and are not just on paper. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Barden. Are there any other public comments before we move on to presentation by the Santa Monica Housing Authority? All right. Helen Yu, would you like to proceed?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Helen Yu, and I am the Policy and Performance Analyst in the division, and will be presenting item 5A on the agenda. Each year, the Santa Monica Housing Authority is required to submit to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD for short, an annual plan that identifies any discretionary policy changes made to the Housing Choice Voucher, commonly referred to as Section 8, section of the administrative plan, and includes a progress report that details the progress made towards each goal identified in that 5-year plan to inform the agency, voucher participants, and members of the public of any updates to the authority's mission, goals, and objectives. This year, the Santa Monica Housing Authority is not proposing any changes to the current administrative plan. Each Santa Monica Housing Authority HUD-funded voucher program has its own set of requirements for performance reporting, and the annual plan is for policy and progress updates for the Housing Choice Voucher program. Santa Monica Housing Authority prepares and submits a streamlined annual plan due to its voucher-only designation, which means that the Housing Authority does not own or operate any public housing. The deadline to submit the annual plan to HUD is April 17, 2022. The fiscal year 22-23 annual plan reinforces all the provisions set forth in the fiscal year 21-22 annual plan and includes no additional updates or modifications. Progress highlights for the fiscal year 21-22 period include 2 city-funded affordable housing developments totaling 79 apartments were completed, which provided new opportunities for voucher participants. Santa Monica Housing Authority increased voucher utilization by 59 vouchers from July 1st, 2021 to March 1st, 2022, and the Housing Authority issued 261 vouchers among the various programs it administers. 1 permanent supportive housing development targeting persons experiencing homelessness has received its funding commitments and land use and design approvals and will be starting construction in June 2022. The Housing Authority has allocated 57 project-based vouchers to this pending development. The proposed annual plan requires a 45-day public comment period and subsequent approval by the Housing Authority Board, City Council. Both documents were available for public comment from January 31st through March 17th, 2022, and City staff solicited input from the Resident Advisory Board, voucher participants, affordable housing advocates, and the general public via direct mail, email outreach, and a website posting. Although the Housing Authority is not proposing any changes to the current administrative plan, City staff welcomed public input during the public review period as well. No public comments regarding the proposed changes for the annual plan or administrative plan were received during the public comment period. However, 2 program participants communicated their appreciation for being included in the RAB. City staff will update the staff report as needed and include comments for the entire review period for the April 12, 2022 Council meeting, and staff recommends that the Housing Commission recommend to Council to approve the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 Santa Monica Housing Authority Annual Plan provided as item 5 in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yu. Is there any input from the Commission regarding this report, this presentation? Ms. Yu, can you please explain the discretionary revisions attachment, and if there's action being taken on that? There are several attachments to item 5A. One of them is from November 23rd, 2021, and it says discretionary revisions to administrative plan.
I can respond to that.
Hello, Mr. Kemper.
Hello. Good evening, Commissioners and Miss, you may not have that context. One of the commissioners had asked that that attachment from the 11/23 council meeting regarding discretionary changes that were approved be attached to this agenda item on the commission's agenda tonight, just for context, I guess. So we attached it. So that's why it's
So
there.
those have all been approved.
Correct.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments by the commission? All right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Yu and Mr. Kemper, for the presentation and information. We will now resume with the revised agenda meeting order, and we're moving on to item 8A. This is written communication submitted by the public, and this is discussion of public correspondence regarding proper procedure for subcommittee meetings. Vice Chair Marasco, would you like to take over?
Yes, in reviewing the letter from David Morris that was sent, addressed to then Chair Hilton, and copied all of the housing commissioners and the city council and city attorney. It just came to my attention that that possibly the work plan subcommittee meeting should be an ad hoc committee rather than a subcommittee meeting, as it's not really necessarily a standing subcommittee and doesn't require, like, it's created once a year, and it doesn't require, like, once it's created, it doesn't require ongoing action. That's first. The fact that it is a one-time year process of creating the work plan for a 12-month period. It only requires that there be a one-page report submitted at the end of the previous 12 months to discuss the progress made on the work plan over that prior 12 months. And that I believe is stated in, I don't have it in front of me, the bylaws. As to what the work plan is supposed to consist of, and information that I have gotten just looking at, how work plans work. I mean, it was a new experience for me, and it was not how Robert's Rules of Order would have required the subcommittee meeting or the subcommittee, the work plan subcommittee meeting to proceed. So I'm saying that, the meeting should be properly noticed, first of all, with all committee members provided notification of the date and the time of the meetings, and for all committee members to work together and come to a consensus of what should or should not be included. And I believe even a chair should be selected at the time of the creation of the subcommittee, and we didn't perform in that way. And so it is my, I would like to have discussion about this, and to hear what other commissioners have to say about it, and possibly a motion to amend the bylaws to include these some specifics about whether or not it's an ad hoc or a subcommittee, and whether or not or to state specifically how the subcommittee is supposed to function with regard to the work plan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marasco. Is there anyone else who would like to add to the discussion, has any questions or comments concerning the public correspondence that was submitted? My understanding is essentially this is a criticism of some of the previous methods of subcommittee meeting and notification, or perhaps lack of notification. I do think it's important for us to emphasize proper procedure to ensure that everyone's input is incorporated into the annual work plan. And Commissioner Kamner also mentioned something to that effect earlier on. Is there anything anyone else would like to add before we move on? Yes.
Wait, and I wanted to state too, because we moved the agenda around, and so I wasn't prepared for this to come before item 4C. This is related to item 4C. I just wanted to say that up front.
Okay. Is there? Do we have a motion standing right now, or would you like to? Make the bridge between those two items on the agenda?
Well,
because this item is discussion. There wasn't necessarily a motion. You mentioned bylaws, but did you want to move on to work plan item 4C in order to discuss more details?
If I could, for efficiency, if I could just combine them and dovetail into so that it's not broken up and we're revisiting the same thing. If everyone's in agreement for me to be able to do that.
Sure. Are there any objections to us moving also right into 4C, which is a related item? Discussion and possible action regarding request for future commission work plan subcommittee meetings to be made public with possible amendment to bylaws. If there are no objections, then Vice Chair Marasco, you can go ahead.
So as I was stating, basically in everyone's eagerness and determination to get started on the subcommittee work plan, not all the subcommittee members were fully included in the drafting of the actual work plan. This resulted in a lot of confusion and inefficiency and did not reflect the input of all the subcommittee members. This was actually brought up at the February 17th Housing Commission meeting. So the member of the public sent an email regarding that communication about that in the February 17th Housing Commission meeting. That was sent on February 24th by David Morris, and was addressing it to Commissioner Hilton, who was the chair at the time, and copied the commission and the city council members to express his concerns about how the subcommittee members conducted the meeting and called for more transparency and accountability. This is what stuck out to me the most about the letter, was that the public is calling for transparency and accountability. So per Robert's Rules of Order, and in looking at the examples of both the Boards and Commissions Ad Hoc Committee and the Audit Subcommittee, who have made their meetings open for public participation, I would like to move to make the work plan subcommittee meetings public going forward. And by making the work plan subcommittee meetings public, it would allow for greater transparency and give the public an opportunity to fully participate, which I feel is very beneficial for both the commission and the public.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marasco. Commissioner Kamner.
The concerns that I have about the way that the work plan done is that there was, a selection of commissioners for the subcommittee to work on the work plan that did not represent different views that are on the commission. And I think that there's a continued minimization of different viewpoints on the commission, and I don't believe that that is democratic. I don't think that it's consistent with what the public wants. I mean, I think that there are certainly members of the public that would like for this commission to be only one viewpoint. But I think not having different viewpoints represented in that subcommittee, and then when recommendations are brought back to the commission and different viewpoints are not incorporated there either, that's a part of a systematic effort to silence different viewpoints, viewpoints that a lot of people in the public do have, and I don't think it's constructive. I don't think that different viewpoints are threatening. I think that people having different viewpoints helps create better policy. It helps us create better decisions and recommendations to the city council and to do our jobs. So I think that there should be, I appreciate the attempt to revisit how the work plan is being done, but I think as a part of that, there should be a incorporation of an attempt to include different viewpoints and not turn this into an echo chamber.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemner. Are there any other comments or questions, any debate or discussion concerning the possibility of future Housing Commission annual work plan subcommittee meetings being made public?
I have a few comments. At
Please,
our
Commissioner
January meeting, it was the commission that decided to have an election process, meaning to appoint the 3 individuals to the subcommittee. And during the first meeting with all 3 individuals, I did have the handout because somebody has to initiate the discussion. So when there was a disagreement, which was about 45 minutes after the meeting began, I offered to turn the entire work plan, both meetings and content, over to the commissioner that was objecting. And the commissioner said no. Now, as far as our subcommittee, and I've been on many, none was as an inclusive and participatory process as this one. I've been on many, many subcommittees in 20 years. But aside from personal differences, I think I'd like to ask staff here a question about public meetings, subcommittee public meetings, because they would have to be in a public place. There would have to be public noticing, which may cost money, and there'd have to be a budget for any reasonable accommodations request. So, question to staff: is there a requirement that board, commission, subcommittees are public meetings, or is this optional?
Commissioner Hilton, I don't hear the city weighing in right away, but I think we know from dozens of city commissions and boards and the council that subcommittee meetings are not always public, but that doesn't mean that they aren't sometimes public meetings.
Okay, then I'll change my question. So if we change our bylaws and we say that all task force subcommittees are public meetings, staff, do we have the budget from Housing Division to pay for any of the costs.
Point of clarification, the motion under discussion only concerns the subcommittee related to the annual work plan, not all subcommittees. So this would have limited scope because the annual work plan subcommittee, I believe by its nature, would be an ad hoc subcommittee with perhaps 2 to 4, maybe as many as 5 or 6 meetings, but a limited number of meetings over the course of a month or less. That would be the extent of those public subcommittee meetings. It wouldn't apply to other subcommittees. Does that change your question at all, or you'd still like to know about funding?
Well, if the work plan is the only meeting or subcommittee that's open to the public, there's still costs. So it's still the question still is the same. Does the Housing Division have the budget for public meetings?
We have a representative here from the city or the Housing Authority who can speak to that. It looks like we don't. Okay. Commissioner Hilton, we don't have an answer to that question at this time. Was there any other comment or question concerning the possibility of, yes, Vice Chair Marasco?
So I'm just, first, I'm not understanding what the costs would be exactly. I mean, I don't know if it's, we do these meetings virtually by BlueJeans, and again, the boards and commissions ad hoc committee and the audit subcommittee do it via BlueJeans, so it would be the same in my understanding as a housing commission meeting. And also, I don't understand what the cost would be related for reasonable accommodation. If you can provide more of a detailed explanation of that. I'm not exactly, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hilton didn't provide a more detailed explanation of that. I wasn't aware that there would be any cost. And also the work plan, to respond, we only spent a total of 3 hours, and I think I had an individual phone call from Chair Hilton at the time, but was not a subcommittee meeting. But I don't understand how much, it doesn't seem like it would be a significant cost. It's not like it's an ongoing, you're having meetings once a month, once a week. It's, just coming together for, maybe 1, 2, or 3 sessions to complete a work plan. So it doesn't seem like it would be some kind of huge expense that the city would not provide in support of making it public for both the benefit of the commission and the benefit of, the subcommittee and the commission and the public in creating this work plan.
If I may, I was on the. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, please, Commissioner Gomez, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may here, I really think we have veered significantly off the tracks here. I was on that particular subcommittee, and I think it's a complete representation for comments in the context of there was an absence of transparency, that voices were being suppressed. At the end of the day, the three of us apparently did not work well. One of the commissioners opted to take what they wanted to promote, the commission in general, as opposed to working it within the confines of the subcommittee. And that's what's happened here. And I think trying to turn things upside down because there was dysfunctionality associated with this subcommittee is a bit absurd. And I also think, again, I'm going to go back to my earlier comment. The fact that we are spending so much time rehashing this issue is very surprising to me. And again, I think we need to call this what it is. We had three people that didn't work together as well as they could have. And going forward, I think we need to ensure that that is the case, that people work together, that commissioners work together better. But I think adding layers of bureaucracy because three people couldn't necessarily work together as good as they could have, I just don't find productive at all.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Are there any other comments about this issue? Yes, Vice Chair Marasco.
I don't know. Am I allowed to make a final comment?
Certainly.
So again, I just want to bring attention back to this whole thing, regardless of how the subcommittee worked together. I do agree with Commissioner Kamner as far as there needs to be more inclusion and diversity in creating the work plan. But this is mostly based on, again, the call from the public for greater transparency and inclusion. So that is the reason why I brought this forward, just so that we could discuss making the work plan subcommittee meetings public for the reasons already stated, and possibly amending the bylaws.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marasco. If no one has anything else to add, I'll make my comment. Obviously, this issue has come up more than once over multiple months because there is an issue. There has been an issue, even if it's not apparent to all the commissioners involved. I think that considering that, and we're speaking specifically about the annual work plan subcommittee, which again should be an ad hoc committee, and arguably that subcommittee does acts as a gatekeeper and does some of the most important business of the Housing Commission, because they determine what our agenda will be for the entire year. And so whereas we promote transparency and public involvement in monthly Housing Commission meetings, arguably it's absolutely as important, if not more important, that the process by which we determine what makes it to the agenda is as transparent and as open to public comment. And so, and having said that, I think, I don't think costs are a significant issue in terms of reasonable accommodations of a disability. Those are an imperative under the Americans with Disabilities Act, regardless of the context, if it's a regular meeting or a subcommittee meeting, and it can be a public member who requests that accommodation, or it can be a commissioner. And so those costs are both negligible and also amortized across the entirety of city government. So I think that cost would be negligible, if at all. I think it's a great idea, since at least for now, there's been some contention about the way that the sausage has gotten made recently, that we, sunlight is a great disinfectant. So I think it's a great idea for us to open this up to the public, not only to make the process by which these decisions are made transparent, but equally, if not more importantly, so the public can weigh in on those very important conversations and help prioritize our work for the entire year. So, having said that, the motion on the table is for future annual work plan subcommittee meetings for the Housing Commission to be made public. And is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBaca. If there are no objections, we'll move to a roll call vote. Are you in favor of making future work plan subcommittee meetings public? Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
No, because we discussed these items during regular commission meetings. So, no.
Okay. Commissioner Hilton?
No, because it politicizes the efforts of the subcommittee.
Vice Chair Marasco?
Yes.
The vote is 3 for and 2 against, and the meeting chair votes yes, and so the motion passes. Future commission work plan subcommittee meetings will be made public, and I think we can address in the future whether or not that needs to become a part of the bylaws or not. Okay. So moving on to item 4D. This is discussion and possible action regarding Housing Commission drafting a letter to City Manager David White requesting city staff take Housing Commission meeting minutes until a dedicated secretary is hired in accordance with Housing Commission bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order, which are attached to this item. Let me see. Okay, I added this item and to the agenda. Minutes are required for our meetings by both the Housing Commission bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. They're expressly not equivalent to an audio or video recording or a written transcript. They're meant to be a tool and a practical source of information. We haven't had minutes, meeting minutes, for over a year. And I understand that we have city staffing issues that are exacerbated by the pandemic. However, this is a fundamental component of transparent governance. And perhaps even more important, it's a tool that makes it even possible for commissioners, city staff, council members, and others to build on the work that we've done. To take one example, we've voted on several actions that we're taking tonight, and yet there won't be any record of that other than the entirety of the recording of this meeting. And it's very difficult to quickly ascertain what's happened in previous meetings, which is necessary when you're deciding on the work that's being done now and in the future. Furthermore, the public feels locked out. We've heard public comment about this, about the lack of transparency and the lack of minutes for our meetings also makes our business more opaque to the public, as well as us. So it's important that we take concrete actions. I understand that the city is expecting to hire someone within the next few months. However, even one more meeting without minutes is an affront to the efficient running of our city business and the public, whose input and oversight are crucial to a free, fair, and open government and running of our city. And so therefore, I move that we request that a letter be submitted to City Manager David White to have city staff, which can be regular staff or a temporary hire, to take Housing Commission meeting minutes until a dedicated secretary is hired in order to abide by Housing Commission bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order newly revised. Is there a second?
I second.
Are there any questions or comments? All right. If
Commissioner Gray?
Yes, Commissioner Hilton.
Before you move to a vote, you could ask for discussion.
I thought I just did that.
No, you asked for discussion after the second of the motion.
My understanding is that is the order dictated by Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, after the second, the input is to discuss the motion.
Yes.
Whether there's a request for any amendment to the motion.
Yes, that's what we're calling for right now, what I'm calling for right now. Do you have a comment on the motion or amendment you'd like to make or a question?
Well, it's just to clarify that the commission discussed and already voted to send a letter about a budget for staff and minutes. And as chair, I sent that letter January 24th. We've been given a budget staff to assist at our meetings. And as for preparation of minutes, I was going to ask staff to explain, but Robert's Rules of Order addresses, for the most part, parliamentary procedure locally, and it's according to staff, the audio tape of the board's commissions, and I don't necessarily agree, but it's the meeting record and substitutes for written minutes. So we don't locally go based on necessarily on Robert's Rules of Order when it comes to budgets.
As a point of clarification, the requirement for minutes is in both the Housing Commission bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order, which are also cited by the Housing Commission bylaws as controlling for anything not already referenced in the bylaws. And in comparable language that's more elaborate than our bylaws in other in the City Council, for example, it's very clear that minutes are not equivalent to the entirety of an audio or a video recording. And if for no other reason, then you would have to, in order to glean any information from that, you would have to sit through the entire thing again. It's not even indexed, which I understand city council meetings are, so at least you can jump from item to item in the video of a city meeting. But even so, somebody going back and trying to determine if an idea they want to propose on an agenda in the future, for example, if they're relatively new to the council and they want to see if that item has been addressed already, there's no way for them to do that unless they go back and watch every single Housing Commission meeting, which is not reasonable, and it's not an efficient and productive use of all of our time and energy and money. So I do appreciate, Commissioner Hilton, that you did write that initial letter that it was voted on. You wrote that initial letter requesting someone to take minutes. And I believe as a result of that, we are going to have a dedicated hire around June or maybe July, which is greatly appreciated. And I look forward to that happening. Having a permanent designated secretary should smooth the meetings considerably, and the business that we do outside of the meeting. However, there are a number of months between now and then, and in the meantime, we still go without minutes, which means we have no reliable record of what's taking place in a meeting, short of going back and reviewing the entire meeting. So, are there any other comments or questions concerning this? Any debate or amendments? All right, if there's no objection, I move to draft a letter to City Manager David White requesting city staff to take Housing Commission meeting minutes until a dedicated secretary is hired in accordance with Housing Commission bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBaca. If there's no objection, we'll move to a roll call vote. Are you in favor of requesting from the city temporary staff to take minutes for us? Commissioner Kamner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBaca?
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton?
Abstain.
Vice Chair Marosco?
Yes.
And the meeting chair votes yes, and so 5 votes for and 1 abstention. The motion passes. All right, moving on, we are at item 9B. This is a Housing Commission member discussion item, and I've added this to the agenda with similar motivation to the previous item. This is discussion and possible action regarding identifying and making available all current governing documents of the Housing Commission, and also making them available by adding links to the Housing Commission page of the city's website. By way of brief explanation, I have been newly appointed to the Housing Commission, and so one of the first tasks I set for myself was reading the bylaws and any other city resolutions, charter sections, or any other documents that control our proceedings. And I had a very difficult time uncovering those things. I did receive a copy of the bylaws that was provided by the city. However, the copy had no date stamp on it. There was no version information, and so there wasn't any actual confirmation that it wasn't just a draft, for example. And that concerns me because the Housing Commission does important work, and the bylaws are important for us to do our work efficiently and well. And I think in addition to the commissioners having access to this, that the public should have access to this so they know the rules that we're operating under at any given time. And so I would just like for the city to identify and collect all of the documents that relate to Housing Commission business, whether it's the Housing Commission bylaws or something like just a section of the city charter, which there's at least one that affects our dealings here on the commission, and that when those are all collected, that they are made available not only to the commission, but also made available permanently to the public through hyperlinks on the city's website on the Housing Commission pages. So I guess, do I require a motion to make this request of the city? Is that something you can tell me, Mary?
I believe so. And I do believe you need 4 votes in order to pass something. Like you need 4 ayes or something.
In order to pass
A motion. Yeah, it can't just be like 3, 2, and whoever else the most. I think it needs to be 4.
Okay, and is that, you mean it's supposed to be 2/3?
There just needs to be a minimum of 4 people, or it can be moved on to, anyway. Again, maybe I should retain my standby status. But it was okay.
No, I appreciate your input.
Yeah.
I really don't know, so.
Someone in the chat who's mentioned that to me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Could I ask a procedural question here?
Please, Commissioner Gomez.
Yeah. So Mary, you said that to pass a motion requires 4 votes.
Yes, it was pointed out to me in a chat during this.
Okay. Subsequent to this discussion, my question is, did all the motions we pass this evening have 4 votes?
As a point of clarification, because I'm not sure they all did, 4 votes are not required for all motions. There are 7 commissioners on the commission, and so a simple majority is required, which would be 4 votes if everyone were present. Since there are only 6, it would still be 4 votes because 3 and 3 would be a tie, which would result in a losing motion. And there are particular exceptions that require a 2/3 vote. Things that are, for example, moving to suspend the rules to do something that's not covered under them, something like that. And for example, changing the bylaws would also require a 2/3 vote. But simple motions only require a simple majority to answer that. I just wasn't sure specifically dealing with the city business, Mary, if that was the case. So, but in general, those are the guidelines according to Robert's rules and the bylaws.
In general, or they are?
They are. Those are the guidelines for most motions. There are a handful of exceptions for motions that require 2/3 instead of a simple majority. But we haven't made any of those motions.
So you answered my question then, right? That then everything that passed this evening is consistent with Robert's rules.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
We can move on. We can move on.
Okay. So I'm sorry, Mary, is that something that we can just ask of you or the city without a motion for those things to be collected? I just wanted to bring it up in the meeting because I thought it was significant that these documents were so difficult to find, and I wanted the public to know that that we were aware of it.
I guess you do your usual procedures for achieving such things.
I just brought it up, and I have spoken with Jim Kemper about it. It's something that the city can put together. But like I said, I wanted to put it on the agenda because I wanted the public to have the opportunity here that we're aware that it's not necessarily very accessible to find. Those documents aren't very accessible, and I'd like to work on remedying that. So thank you for your attention. Okay, now we're moving on to our last item, which is, I believe, our last item. No, I'm sorry. Forgive me. We're moving on to item 9F, amending bylaws. Discussion and possible action regarding amending Housing Commission bylaws to expand and clarify the agenda development and approval process and clarify the procedure to follow when chair, vice chair, and/or commissioners disagree on agenda content. Vice Chair Marasco, would you like to proceed?
The because this meeting is been so, no, I wish to table this item for now.
Okay. So you move to table item 9F. If there are no objections, I'm sorry, is there a second? Is there a second to that motion to table item 9F?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hilton. If there are no objections, we will pass the motion to table 9F to a future time.
I don't think we should table this because, you know, I feel that there have been issues that have been brought up at this meeting today that are still unresolved. So, you know, I'm just concerned if it's tabled, you know, when is this going to be brought back? When are we going to revisit these problems that have come up? I guess I have concerns about tabling it.
Fair enough. Would it allay those concerns if we tabled it to a specific time? If we tabled it until next month's meeting? Instead
I would appreciate
an unspecified time. Okay, great. So the amended motion is to table item 9F just until next month's meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Kamner, did you say that?
Yeah. Yep. I'll second it.
I believe the motion was made by you. I was just restating the motion that I believe you were making. So I think someone else has to second.
Oh, I thought it was like a friendly amendment, but
I'm sorry. Yeah,
it doesn't. I can do the motion. It's fine.
Gotcha.
Whatever.
Okay, I'm sorry if I misunderstood. Okay, so Commissioner Kamner seconded. If there are no objections, we will. The motion will pass for us to table item 9F just until next month's meeting. And hearing no objections, the motion passes. All right, we are moving on to item, let's see, we've done 5A. There is no item 6, public hearing, no 7 resolutions. So we're on to 9A, Housing Commission member discussion items. This is concerning the housing element. Housing and Community Development, February 8th, 2022 letter and appendix of 7 pages, which are attached to the agenda. City-owned sites, accessory dwelling units, affirmatively furthering fair housing. I turn it over to you, Commissioner Hilton.
Housing and Community Development sent a letter to the city dated February 8th, which includes a 5-page appendix. And I thought I'd provide a summary of just 3 of HCD's concerns. And I'll try to be neutral. I'll try to just provide the statistics and the facts. The first one I wanted to describe is city-owned sites. The city issued an RFP and approved a parking structure 3. This is for 120 to 150 affordable units. As for the 9 to 12 city-owned sites that have been identified, the initial capacity was 2,356 units. Our housing element reduced the number to between 1,700 to 1,800 affordable units. I think it was due to financial unknowns. In the Housing and Community Development Appendix, and it's on page 2 and 4, they cautioned the city may be over-relying on production, and they suggested revisions undoubtedly related to the cost revenues associated with the development. The second one is accessory dwelling units. Our ADU numbers are based on permitted ADUs from 2018. The city averaged 80 units per year. Our initial projection was 700 units. It's in the HR&A analysis. May 26, 21, pages 45, 46, our housing element production was revised to 352 units or 44 units per year. The Housing Community Development Appendix said the trends versus what is indicated need to be reconciled. Finally, the third item is the Housing Community Development references to protected classes and affirmatively furthering fair housing. The HCD appendix uses the term segregation twice and advises the city to, quote, revise program 4.D, rezoning R1 neighborhoods, unquote. It's on page 5 of the appendix. This is my comment. There are 8 individuals, organizations who provided input. They're listed on the in the letter on page 1. Few, maybe one, appears to be from or representing a protected class, lower income, or special needs household. Regarding our assessment of Fair Housing Plan 2020, 231-page report, which was contracted out, it used the term, quote, perpetuation of segregation, unquote, and this was in reference to our local priority wait list and not necessarily to our R1 single family. So that summarizes just 3 in the appendix. So I think we can take either public or commissioner input on the HCD letter or appendix. It's just a suggestion.
Thank you, Commissioner Hilton. Please
and
go
then
ahead.
finally, in the case of the state response, our planning division staff will be preparing revisions, and when they return, that will be the opportunity for us as a commission to provide input.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hilton. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Is there any public comment on item 9A?
Yes, please.
All right.
Yes,
what's your name?
Please. Denise
Please.
Barton.
Hello, Ms. Barton.
Good evening. Hi. On the issue of the housing element for Santa Monica's 6th cycle, I am again glad to see under B, housing programs, it again cites fair housing shortfalls that the city may need to revise or add programs to affirmatively further fair housing. Might putting the disabled at a low priority in one place in the housing element, when in another part the housing authority is trying to say they're increasing programs and services for the disabled, be confusing, because the two situations don't coincide. Or maybe it's being noticed that the programs the Santa Monica Housing Authority claims exist don't in reality. An example of this would be my recertification for this year, for which I had $900 in medical expenses. But then Jim Camper keeps informing me that the Santa Monica Housing Authority has not received it. So the only saving grace for me is that my advocate from an organization that works with me is the one who submits my recertification papers for me. Twice now they've been submitted to the Housing Authority. So that's my witness, making one wonder if it's being done to not give me the medical expense deduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barton. Are there any other public comments on item 9A?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Olga Zurawska again. I see that Commissioner Kamner had her hand up, and I was wondering when Commissioner Kamner speaks, is that a paid performance by Abundant Housing, or who exactly is she speaking on behalf of? Because I know that she is the paid executive director of Abundant Housing, and it's the organization that, under Ms. Kamner's direction, pressed the state to increase our housing production, the RHNA number, to nearly 9,000 new units. And now Ms. Kamner is actually rallying her followers to punish Santa Monica. She's calling on people to basically rat out our city to the state so that the state does not grant an extension to comply with the housing element. And Ms. Kamner is getting paid for that. So I have to object to Ms. Kamner's participation in this item or, again, the commission in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zarowska. Yes, Commissioner Kamner.
Sorry, is there any more public comment? I can go after public comment.
Is there any more public comment on item 9A, the housing element? All right, please, Commissioner Kamner, go ahead.
So I just want to talk generally about the housing element and the general purpose of what this is about and why it's important and why I have been advocating around the RHNA Regional Housing Needs Assessment process and the housing element update process some years now. When I started this, I didn't know anything about this process. I'd never heard of RHNA. I'd never heard of SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments. I'd never heard about HCD. So I was pretty new to it, but I was interested in this because the housing crisis was very urgent to me. I could see that housing costs and homelessness were getting worse. I was concerned about the people it was affecting. I was concerned about seeing families and kids without homes, and even people who did have homes. There was an issue of displacement. There was people leaving communities. I have the fortune to live in Santa Monica, but I could see, friends here, my kids' friends having to leave constantly because of the housing crisis and this housing cost issue. So that was why I decided. Nobody, paid me and said, lobby RHNA. I saw it as something I wanted to advocate for, and that's why I became an advocate. And so just anyway, sorry. But I quickly learned about what RHNA is about, and RHNA is about calculating the region's housing needs based on a few really important numbers. And those numbers are the rent burden and the overcrowding. Okay, so it's about calculating how much housing we need in this region to build to get lower rates of rent crowding and overcrowding and rent burden. And so this RHNA number that we have, it's like about 1.3 million for the SCAG region. That's to get us to national rates of rent burden overcrowding. I don't know about you, but I think that is not enough. I actually think that this RHNA number is still far too low. But nevertheless, it's progress. It's about meeting production needs. It's about addressing what's this very severe housing crisis. And then the next part of the RHNA process is about allocation. It's about where does that number go? Because there's sort of this race to the bottom kind of issue with different jurisdictions. Nobody wants to take responsibility for the housing crisis. Nobody wants to take responsibility for homelessness. They blame neighboring jurisdictions. I've seen this in every jurisdiction in the county. It's somebody else's problem. So the only way to really tackle that is to have a coordinated approach to meeting housing needs and building enough housing to get out of this crisis. So that's why there's like the allocation part of the RHNA process. And it is really important in that allocation process to increase the allocation in places that have high jobs housing imbalances, like Santa Monica, with access to rail transit so that people, are not increasing greenhouse gas emissions. Again, Santa Monica has rail transit. and places with access to opportunity, with access to clean air, where kids, when they're able to have the opportunity to live here, they have better health outcomes and better life outcomes. So that's why, in the ultimate outcome of this process, Santa Monica was given, a pretty ambitious housing target, one that I think is really positive and very necessary. And, it's a number, but what it represents is something to tackle a very real and urgent problem that people are experiencing and suffering from. So I just want to emphasize the importance of this. I think as the Housing Commission, we have a duty and obligation to think about how much people are suffering from this problem here. Not just in the region, but in Santa Monica, they're suffering from these high housing costs. So, I think this commission should think about, that production number as being a big part of our mission. And so what's the next phase of this process? The next phase is the housing element update. That's where the jurisdictions have to prove to the state how they're going to actually reduce those housing targets. Again, like this, a coordinated effort, make sure every jurisdiction is doing its fair share to build housing. So what are like the key issues with the housing element update? Okay, one, there has to be planning. There has to be, realistic planning for that housing production. Again, I'm not an expert in this. Before 3 years ago, I'd never heard about this, but this is what I've learned over a few years of advocacy. Okay, the cities have to make sure there's enough room for that housing production to take place, and in a place where there isn't greenfield or open space, that's a good thing, because we actually don't want to be developing in natural habitats or destroying more of the environment, right? So we want to be focusing on places where it's called urban infill. So that again.
Forgive me, Commissioner Kamner, for interrupting. Just because the housing element is a huge topic that we could talk about for the rest of the evening. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add, particularly regarding the HCD correspondence that Chair Hilton shared with us?
Yeah, I want to explain. Generally the purpose of this process, and then I think that it will have important implications for the city getting a compliant housing element. So I'm sort of trying to explain generally what this is about and then how we get there.
Right. I'm just not, I'm not sure that this is the best forum for doing that now, since the housing element has already been submitted and rejected, and is currently that rejection is, they're currently attempting to remedy that now already. So I'm not sure that an overview of the entire process is most pertinent right now, and we do still have some other business to get to. Did you have any other comments that you wanted to make specifically?
I actually wanted to make a lot more comments about this, and I feel like I should be given the time, just given that this is the thing that I can contribute the most to this housing commission and to the city, and I do want to see the city get a compliant housing element. So I'd just like to explain to everybody, especially also because I'm getting accused of a lot of things that I think are not true, and are just like mischaracterizing my advocacy around this issue. So I feel like I should be given time to at least go over like a general overview of what the housing element is about and what it's going to take for the city to get a compliant housing element.
I can appreciate that. I just don't think that is necessarily germane to the item that we're on right now on 9A.
I think this is a part of this pattern. Everyone else is able to be given time and to get their stuff on the work plan. I don't understand why I'm continually being silenced. I mean, I understand why people want to silence me. I'm not going to say I don't understand that, but I don't think that I don't think it's appropriate, and it's extremely transparent that this silencing is happening.
Okay, well, for what it's worth, this is my first meeting on the Housing Commission, and I'm not at all trying to silence you. My response is not at all because I agree or disagree with anything that you've said. It's my job to make sure that we move through all the items on the agenda in a timely manner. And I absolutely want to give you the floor to address anything that you'd like to discuss or debate or ask Commissioner Hilton about regarding this particular sub-item of the housing element in general, but I'm not sure that we really have the time or the scope in this item right now to address all the things that you're talking about.
Well, I don't understand why other commissioners, haven't had this kind of warning. Like, why am I the only one being cut off in the middle of what I'm saying? And I don't think I'm taking an excessive amount of time.
No, I don't think you're taking an excessive amount of time at all. It's just that I'm not sure that the content of what you're saying is germane anymore to the specific item that we're discussing. It's not at all a personal attempt to silence you. And speaking specifically to your concern about your input not having been incorporated into the work plan, I encourage you to submit, and I understand your concern, and I agree with you about the item that we tabled in terms of how items get onto the agenda. And so I am looking forward to revisiting that item next month so we can clarify how best for everyone to participate in that process to make sure that a full complement of diverse opinions and insight are incorporated into the agenda and subsequently eventually the work plan. But I encourage you to agendize things in the future to discuss aspects of this that you feel are important. I'm just not sure that a general treatment right now is germane given this particular item. Does that sound fair?
No, I do not think this is fair. I don't think this is fair, and I object to it.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. We do have to move on. I accept your objection. To moving on, we are going to, if there are no other comments or questions and no motions on the table, we will move on to item 9C, which is our last item for the evening. And this is Housing Commission member discussion items continued, request for reports. And this is my item. I would like to request, it's pretty self-explanatory, I would like to submit a letter to City Manager David White, formally requesting him to produce 2 reports to the Housing Commission, which I believe have also, this is the end of a series of requests by multiple people in multiple positions for this same information. And so this is really just a formality. But I would like a report showing, and there's a small amendment to this, a report showing the distribution of new housing vouchers per zip code. All housing vouchers per zip code since 2006, not new housing vouchers per 2016. The request is actually for a report showing the distribution of all housing vouchers per zip code since 2006 in order to determine the distribution of new housing vouchers since 2016 and seeing whether those vouchers have been concentrated in specific neighborhoods, particularly Pico neighborhood and downtown. The second request is for a report detailing the Housing Authority's justification for setting current payment standards based on the 2016 fair market value as opposed to the 2022 small area fair market value, which I believe would be much more appropriate given our economic reality and the demographics and the housing costs in Santa Monica. Now, I do understand that the a report was just released in the last week or less that covers some of the information in the first report that I'm requesting. So this would really just be a request to expand on the information that was presented in that report. And then the second report request is a longstanding demand from a lot of public comment and a number of Santa Monica Housing Authority clients who have problems even securing housing once they have housing vouchers because the payment standard is not amenable to housing costs in Santa Monica, even on the lowest end. Is there a second to my motion to submit a letter to City Manager David White requesting these two reports?
I'm sorry, I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or debate concerning this? If there's no objection, we'll move to a roll call vote.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, please, Vice Chair Marasco.
Did we lose Commissioner DeBaca?
Oh, I don't know. Mary, can you tell us that?
It appears she's not here. You're right.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Vice Chair Marasco, was there something else that you wanted to add to this item, concerning this item?
No.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? I'm sorry. Also, is there any are there any public comments concerning this item? Any input that anyone would like to offer? Okay. If there are no objections, we'll move to a roll call vote. If you are in favor of submitting a letter to City Manager David White requesting the two reports that we've just discussed, Commissioner Kamner. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Commissioner Kamner. You abstain. Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeBaca is gone. Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton.
Abstain.
Vice Chair Marasco.
Yes.
Okay. That is 2 votes in favor and 2 abstentions. The meeting chair votes yes. And so with that, the motion passes and we will submit that request to City Manager David White. And as we already did item 10, public input at the beginning of the meeting, that brings us to the end of our meeting, unless there's any other business that anyone would like to raise. I'd like to thank all of the commissioners and Vice Chair Marasco and the public for your participation today, and especially your patience. Business today was arrived at in a somewhat disjointed manner, and hopefully future meetings will be a little less complicated. But I appreciate your patience and participation, and especially that of Mary Orr for so graciously assisting us this evening and making the process as smooth as possible. So thank you very much, Mary Orr. And with that, if there are no objections, I will move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mary Orr.
Thank you. I just want to thank all the commissioners for volunteering their time. It's an amazing giving resident like me.
Oh, I'm sorry, you broke up, Mary.
Oh.
Say that again?
Oh, just I'm a longtime resident of Santa Monica, and I just want to thank all you commissioners for volunteering your time to improve the community.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you too. All right, I think we're done.
Adjourned at
Thank you guys.
8:55.
Take care. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.